So welcome to our second session of this day of this conference. My name is Thomas Prorok. I'm from KDZ, Center of Public Administration Research, working on the BASIT program. It's an honor to have this panel discussion here with you in this conference. The panel discussion is about impact of COVID-19 on the local governments in the core, and we want to discuss today COVID-19 on the one side, what is the impact or what could be the consequences for the implementation of the SDGs, and what are the consequences maybe also for the EU integration. Why do we do that? You know the BASIT program already. It has already been introduced by Alexandra, our moderator. We stand for EU integration, for strong local governments, and for good governance. Yeah? And we believe that the SDGs are a driver for all these objectives: integration, EU integration, local governments, strong local governments, good governance in the region. This is our strong belief. This is also why we have our BASIT program oriented on these, on the SDGs, on the Sustainable Development Goals. But of course, we have seen that the COVID changed our schedule in the last year, and I guess also in the next year, very dramatically. And so we want to start a discussion on the COVID and on the impact of COVID in the beginning. So I'm happy to welcome our panelists here today. You see, I honestly have to excuse in the beginning a little bit. We are 4 men or 5 men here. This was originally planned differently, but I have to admit that due to maybe also COVID, there had been some changes in the agenda. So some, let's say, we had to change some speakers, and now we are 4 men. We know that, and when you look at the full agenda of this conference, you see that we are very much gender oriented, but not on this panel. But nevertheless, please welcome with me our experts, our panelists. I will introduce them later on in more detail, but I would like to welcome Lukas Mandl. Hello, welcome. He's member of the European Parliament. I want to welcome Emanuil Manolov. He's president of NALAS, of the Network of Associations of Local Authorities in Southeastern Europe, one of our key partners. Welcome. I want to welcome Damir Marjanović, who is professor in the International Burch University in Sarajevo and member of the Canton Parliament of the Canton Sarajevo in Bosnia-Herzegovina. And I want to welcome Stefano Marta from the OECD, working on cities, urban policies and sustainable development division. We invited these speakers because we think it makes sense to have from different views. And you see, we have the view of the, let's say, European Union, the European Parliament, of the local governments with 2 representatives, and also of OECD, who is a big, important driver in these issues, COVID, SDGs, integration, to give an overview of, let's say, of their work in this panel. How do we organize it? We organize it in a way you have already seen before. We have the chat, so please, the participants can use also the chat for, let's say, questions and comments. But first, we will start with every one of the panelists is invited to give a short statement. We agreed on that before, so that I will invite everyone to have about 7-minute statement about what is their approach to the topic of our panel. After that, we go into a discussion. No? The discussion will mainly focus on what to do now in future. Yeah? What to do now in future when we consider COVID, when we consider EU integration, and also how local governments can support this process, and which role are the SDGs maybe playing on that. So we, in the discussion, want to look at the future, and in the discussion we will do it like before. The chat comments will be taken over by me and presented to the panelists. Yeah, I don't want to go on let's say, to bother you anymore. I would like to give the floor to our first speaker, to our first panelist, who is Lukas Mandl. Welcome once more. Lukas Mandl is member of the European Parliament since 2017. He is in the EPP group, in the European People's Party group. He's Austrian. He comes from the same region like I'm coming. That's what I like very much. He was vice mayor in an Lower Austrian, mid-sized municipality. He was member of the regional parliament in Lower Austria. He is now vice president of the European Assembly of Regions. And in the parliament, in the EU Parliament, I want to focus or mention that he is active member of the delegation for relations with Bosnia, Herzegovina and Kosovo. So I want to welcome you, Lukas. I would like to give the floor to you to have a short statement and overview of, let's say, the work of the European Parliament and your work concerning, let's say, what has happened with COVID and what are the impacts of COVID in your view on the integration issues. You have to open your microphone. Can we open his microphone? Was muss ich machen? You cannot unmute his microphone. Ja, aber es sind alle draußen. Es sind alle unmuted. So, yeah, I'll try it once more. It's working.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great that we overcame the technical inconveniences so fast. Thomas, thank you so much for the kind introduction, and thanks for having me at the Danube Governance Conference today. And thanks to all the involved organizations into this important conference regarding these really, really crucial and timely and also future-oriented issues. I'm also happy that we have the opportunity to coordinate and communicate and to interact actually between different Danube-related regions. I have been active in the Institute for Central Europe and the Danube Region, headed by Erhard Buchner for many years. I have been active in the Institute of the Regions of Europe, headed by Franz Schwarzberger, also always dealing with the Danube region. And let's say my whole approach as a parliamentarian on European level is the one of supporting and working closely with the local level and the regional level. Due to my experience, due to my, let's say, general political view on things, it's important that we connect, and that's why it must not be underestimated that we have this opportunity to talk today. As Thomas has already introduced, one of my focused areas on this planet in my work in European Parliament, in the Foreign Affairs Committee, the Security and Defense Committee, and other committees is the Western Balkans. The 6 countries of the Western Balkans are clearly European territory. And of course, they are closely connected with the Danube. On the other side, we see that many powers from other parts of the world try to influence the Western Balkans and try to influence Europe as a whole via their activity in the Western Balkans. That's why the integration process of the Western Balkans is so important. That's why I appreciate so much the European attitude of the vast majority of the citizens of the Western Balkan countries. Their European attitude, their feeling for European identity is in many cases larger than the one of the citizens of the current EU member states. That's why we have to work hard and very concrete on the next steps. As all of us may know, we have ongoing talks with Serbia and Montenegro, but especially regarding Serbia, there is an open issue regarding the dialogue with the Republic of Kosovo. As long as both countries do not finish this dialogue with a positive outcome, with a clear result, with a normalization of relations, and even more, with the view into the future, we can and must expect even more than only normalization. As long as they don't achieve this normalization, they will not become EU member states, both of them. I'm not sure all the time whether this is understood in both countries properly. But we also have other countries like Albania and Northern Macedonia, where we extra, on the demand of a small majority, but an important majority of member states, we extra established a new accession procedure for the beginning, at least, of negotiations for accession with Albania and North Macedonia. And then we have the already mentioned Republic of Kosovo and Bosnia. And the state of play in these different countries is extremely different. Kosovo is mainly blocked on its European path by Serbia, but Kosovo is also the only country of the Western Balkans which has not yet been provided with visa liberalization by EU, which is really something where EU still lacks keeping its promises, and that's what we closely work on. As COVID-19 and response to COVID-19 is a general topic of today's talk, I guess so far and as of today, we can claim that the integration of the European response to the pandemic of the Western Balkans went well so far. In my part, from the parliamentary side, I already in the beginning of the pandemic in March, April, May pushed the Commission, especially Commissioner Vaheli and others, for including the Western Balkans in each and every financial support, medical support, stockpile support, and so on the EU may establish. And Commissioner Vaheli and the whole Commission responded quickly and included and integrated the Western Balkan countries very quick into the ongoing processes regarding the pandemic. 70 million euros were spent, for example, for early access to COVID-19 vaccines in the Western Balkans. And in fall last year, the Commission has presented an economic and investment plan for the Western Balkans in the amount of 9 billion to support sustainable connectivity, human capital, competitiveness, and inclusive growth, and the twin green and digital transition. So we still face a lot of challenges. We still face many government officials and parliaments officials all over the world, especially in Europe, also in the Western Balkans, who do the thing that is right in the crisis, to respond quickly, to act fast. And that's also why, for example, Austria, which is traditionally closely connected with Kosovo, has decided to hand over 600,000 vaccines to Kosovo. For all Austrians, fellow Austrian citizens, we always have to claim, of course, responsibility in a country means that in the first place, the country's citizens receive their vaccines. Of course, that's priority, but we also have a bigger responsibility, which is not only with regard to a gift to anybody, but which is with regard to a proper pandemic response, since as long as not everybody on this planet is safe, nobody is safe, because that's the whole nature of a pandemic, that we are interested and we have to remain interested in safety for all the world. And that means development support for other parts of the world, especially within Europe, when it comes to the vaccines and to other questions of the pandemic response, is crucial and is, of course, in our own interest. I just want to share with you some other food for thought. One is that, of course, the Western Balkan countries on a political level, on an economic level, have to lead many reforms in order to become fit for EU accession. Reforms in the field of rule of law, in the field of fighting corruption, in the field of, let's say, being more attractive for investments, because job creation demands investments from outside, and investments will come when rule of law is in proper place. And there is one good reason, one other positive aspect for investments, and one good reason to invest in the Western Balkans, that's the average age of the people there, especially in Kosovo, but also in the Western Balkan countries. The average age is much lower than in the rest of Europe. There are young people, as mentioned, feeling a strong European identity, feeling to belong to the political West, working hard, seeking for education, doing themselves a lot to be fit for the labor market and to contribute, especially in a field that's important for the future, and that's the field of digitalization. The field of software engineering, of software architecture, of coding, and this is why I always claim a vision for the Western Balkans, for all the 6 countries, could be to become some kind of Silicon Valley of Europe. Why not? Why always only dealing with trouble and problems in the Western Balkans, which I do on a daily basis? I know the problems and I try to contribute to solving them, but let's also create a positive vision for the future. And this positive vision is connected with the many young people there and connected with their will to work hard and to educate and to receive education and to develop their fitness, and especially to work in the field of digitalization, which is not only a future perspective, but already happening actually now, when large companies, for example, from Austria, for example, the large Raiffeisen Bank is doing all their IT business when it comes to international business from Raiffeisen Bank International in Kosovo, working closely with the young generation in Kosovo. This is one example of many. Another company from Austria providing nearly all Europe with education software from Graz. A company is called Bitmedia, is working closely with Kosovo. So they are all business to business, of course. So this is not advertisement, but this is providing you with examples, and there are many more examples from all over Europe which can provide motivation to invest in the Western Balkans. Maybe last food for thought is that we also live in the era of disinformation, of attacks against Europe by trying to divide us, trying to divide our societies via social media, disinformation, bots, artificial intelligence, means and measures, and so on, or just conspiracy theories. And the pandemic is really a threat in that regard, because when from outside Europe, some entities pretend to help the Western Balkans more than the European Union does, which is actually not true and never has been true. And if maybe some officials in the Western Balkans or from other parts of Europe join those and also would explain, I receive more help from this or that side as from the European Union, it's in the first place wrong, it's fake news. And secondly, it harms our common European integration path, our understanding of values like democracy, rule of law, and everything we fight for. And that's again, let's say that's the end of the circle I tried to mention. The Western Balkans are European territory, belong to Europe, have a strong European identity among the population, and are a close partner and friend in responding to the pandemic, no matter whether it was stockpiles with medical equipment in the beginning or it is vaccines now or in the future. We work together, we have to work together. And this means not only with government level on state level, but also with local communities and regional communities. Thomas has also mentioned I would be active in the Assembly of European Regions as a vice president. And what I experienced there, and Thomas has already mentioned also the OECD today, the Assembly of European Regions applies not only to EU regions, but to regions in all the OECD countries. And that's why we talk there in a different way than on EU level, because regions from Ukraine are represented as well as regions from Russia. Regions from Turkey are as well represented as regions from Serbia, for example. And that means a lot of connection which has not yet been possible on EU member states level. And this is one more good reason for a close cooperation with local communities and regional entities, since all politics is local. Thank you for your interest, and I look forward to our exchange today. Thank you.
Thank you, Lukas. Thank you also for the optimistic view which you gave us. On the one side, focusing on the rule of law, and with rule of law, investments are coming. I strongly believe in this also. But I additionally like your vision for the region to be a Silicon Valley of Europe. This shows the future orientation, and this is so important. This is so important also for the work we do here, because we are talking about the future. I would like to give the floor to Emanuil Manolov. He is the president of NALAS, of the network of associations of local authorities in Southeast Europe, and he is from Bulgaria, coming from Bulgaria, representing also the National Association of Municipalities of the Republic of Bulgaria, and he's mayor. He's mayor in Pavlikeni municipality in Bulgaria since 2011, so an experienced mayor, to show the European focus, it's also very interesting that his municipality got awarded with the European label of good governance and excellence of the Council of Europe, of the Eloge label. I would like to give the floor to him. He speaks Bulgarian, and we will translate it into English, so just that we don't get confused. NALAS is much working on COVID, on EU integration, and on the importance of municipalities in this issue. Mr. Manolov, please, the floor is yours.
Благодаря. Уважаеми дами и господа, уважаеми гости, колеги, за мен е чест и удоволствие да представлявам НАЛАС на това важно събитие, отбелязващо не само успешния завършек на програмата за изграждане на административен капацитет в Дунавския регион, но също така даващо ни възможност да разгледаме заедно перспективите за европейска интеграция и прилагането на целите за устойчиво развитие на региона.
Dear colleagues, dear guests, I'm honored to represent NALAS in this important event, which gives us an opportunity not only to mark the successful completion of the basic program, but also to look at the perspective of European integration and implementation in the light of sustainable development goals.
Темата на нашата панелна дискусия е именно как да се справим с предизвикателствата и как да отговорим на кризата с COVID-19. Вече почти година е сред приоритетите ми като кмет на средно голяма община в България и също така е в фокуса на дейността на НАЛАС като мрежа от асоциациите на местните власти в Югоизточна Европа.
The topic of this discussion, namely how to address the challenges and how to respond to the crisis, has been my priority as a mayor of a medium-sized municipality in Bulgaria, as well as for the NALAS network of local authorities.
Кризата с коронавируса започна като здравна, но бързо се трансформира в една от най-големите социални и икономически кризи, последиците от която ще ни занимават още дълго време.
The COVID crisis initially began as a health crisis, but quickly evolved into one of the largest social and economic crises, the consequences of which will be facing us for a long time going forward.
За никого няма да изненада, че местните власти в Югоизточна Европа са и остават в челните редици в отговор на тази криза.
It will not be a surprise to anyone that local authorities in South and East Europe are and will remain at the front line of combating this crisis.
В скорошно проучване на НАЛАС разгледахме въздействието на пандемията върху местните власти в Югоизточна Европа, документирахме предизвикателствата и събрахме редица добри практики за това как да отговорим на кризата и как да подкрепим нашите общности.
We at NALAS recently completed a study in which we looked at the impact of the COVID-19 crisis in local governments in the CE region, documented the challenges, and collected a number of good practices on how to respond to the crisis and support our communities.
За да бъде по-ясна картината, ще споделя с вас някои от основните заключения и числа от проучванията.
To make the picture more clear, I will share with you some of the most important conclusions and numbers.
Безспорен е фактът, че COVID-19 оказа голямо въздействие върху всички местни власти в Югоизточна Европа. От тях 45% посочват, че въздействието от кризата е силно или много силно, докато 38% отчитат умерено влияние.
It is an indisputable fact that the COVID crisis has had a major impact on all local governments in the CE region. 45% of the respondents believe that the impact has been strong or very strong, while 30% perceive the impact of the crisis as a moderate one.
COVID има силно териториално измерение, съществуват разлики в въздействието в рамките на и между местните власти в цяла Югоизточна Европа. Въпреки че се отчита като предизвикателство навсякъде, нашето проучване предполага, че местните власти в Косово, Албания, Хърватия, Босна и Херцеговина, Румъния и Турция са били засегнати по-силно в сравнение с останалата част на Югоизточна Европа.
The COVID crisis has an impact across territories and across dimensions. However, the strength of this impact has been varying across local governments through the CE. According to our study, the local governments of Kosovo, Albania, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Romania, and Turkey have experienced an impact which is stronger than the rest of the CE region.
При избухването на пандемията, липсата на адекватни финансови ресурси беше най-важното предизвикателство за местните власти в Югоизточна Европа. В момента основното им предизвикателство е отварянето и съживяването на местните общности и местните икономики.
While at the outbreak of the crisis, the major challenge for SEE local governments was the lack of adequate financial resources. Now, the key challenge is the reopening and revival of the local communities and economies.
Проучването също така потвърди, че в подобни трудни времена местните власти от Югоизточна Европа не само се справят с кризата, като осигуряват необходимите мерки за превенция, подпомагат уязвимите групи и субсидират местните икономики, но много от тях също така са предприели друга смела крачка напред, използвайки иновациите и цифровизация за решаване на проблемите, причинени от пандемията.
The study also confirmed that in these difficult times, the local governments in the SEE region not only coped with the crisis by providing the necessary prevention measures, supporting vulnerable groups and subsidizing local economies, but many of them took a courageous step forward by using innovation and digitalization to solve the problems caused by the pandemic.
Проучването изведе на преден план три важни точки, които бих искал да подчертая. Драматичното въздействие на кризата върху местните финанси, необходимостта от междуправителствена консултация и координация на политиката и значението на трансграничното сътрудничество за справяне с кризата чрез търсене на най-добрите решения.
The study has highlighted three important aspects which I would like to share: the dramatic impact of the crisis on local finances, the need for intergovernmental policy consultation and coordination, and the importance of cross-border cooperation in coping with the crisis by trying to find the best solutions.
Първо, вече е ясно, че кризата с COVID се трансформира в криза на финансите на местното самоуправление. Местните власти в Югоизточна Европа ще бъдат изправени пред извънредни нива на несигурност и ще трябва да вземат трудни решения за спешно ревизиране на бюджетите си. Всичко това в контекста на очаквано увеличение на бюджетната разлика между приходите, разходите и намалената икономическа активност, особено в някои сектори.
First, it is already clear that COVID has evolved into a crisis of local government financing. Local governments in the SEE region will face extraordinary levels of uncertainty and will have to make difficult decisions for reallocation of their budgets on an emergency basis. All this happens in a context of expected deficiency or budget gap, which will expand between revenues, costs, and reduced economic activity, especially in some sectors.
Ако не бъдат ефективно финансирани, местните власти могат да загубят до 30% от приходите си до 2022 година, с обща прогнозна стойност на загубата от 17 милиарда евро.
If local governments are not adequately financed, they are at risk of losing up to 30% of their revenues by the year 2022, and the total loss is estimated at 17 billion euros.
Ако не се противодействат с ефективни мерки, предоставянето и качеството на услугите ще бъдат застрашени и така необходимите инвестиции в инфраструктура, които биха подпомогнали икономическото възстановяване, ще бъдат невъзможни.
If not countered with effective measures, the quality and the delivery of the essential services will be disrupted, and the much-needed infrastructure investments that would support economic recovery will not be possible.
По същия начин всички успешни реформи в сферата на местните финанси, постигнати през последното десетилетие, ще бъдат изложени на риск. Фискалната децентрализация в Югоизточна Европа трябва да продължи и да бъде подкрепена, ако искаме по-устойчиви, стабилни и приобщаващи местни власти, които осигуряват непрекъснат достъп до качествени обществени услуги.
Likewise, all successful local financial reforms that have been achieved so far in the past decade will be put at risk. Fiscal decentralization in the SE region should continue and should be supported if we wish more resilient, sustainable and inclusive local governments to provide on a continuous basis access to public services of high quality.
На второ място, координираният, последователен и всеобхватен отговор на кризата с COVID-19 от всички нива на управление и заинтересованите страни е задължителен.
Secondly, coordinated, consistent and comprehensive response to the COVID-19 crisis at all levels of government and stakeholders is a must.
Повече от всякога трябва да засилим междуправителственото сътрудничество, координация и консултации. Асоциациите на местните власти имат незаменима позиция в този процес и трябва да бъдат подкрепени в изпълнението на своите функции.
More than ever, we need to strengthen intergovernmental cooperation, coordination and consultation. Local government associations have an irreplaceable mandate in this process and must be supported in delivering their functions.
Трето, мисля, че сме наясно, че кризата с COVID-19 има и трансгранични ефекти, което още веднъж показва силната взаимосвързаност между нашите икономики в Югоизточна Европа.
Third, I think everyone is aware that COVID-19 and the cost crisis has strong spillover effects across borders. This once again demonstrates the strong interlink between our economies in Southeast Europe.
Всички ние сме част от глобалната верига на доставки и проблемите, засягащи една страна, могат да имат косвени последици и въздействие за другите. Ясно е, че не можем сами да се справим с такава криза, но трябва да имаме много национален подход на много степенно управление в търсенето на най-добрите решения.
We are all part of the global supply chain, and the problems which affect one can have domino indirect consequences and impact for the rest. It is clear that we cannot cope with such a crisis in isolation and on our own devices, and instead we should have a multinational, multi-level governance approach in quest for the best possible solution.
Ще завърша това встъпително обращение, като изкажа своята признателност към Центъра за изследвания на публичната администрация, KDZ, и тяхната програма BASIT, които вече десетилетия играят много важна роля за укрепване на структурите на управление в региона и в подкрепа на налаз за насърчаване на децентрализацията и ролята на местното самоуправление.
I will conclude these opening remarks by acknowledging that over a decade, the KDZ, Center for Public Administration Research, and their PASIT program have played a very important role in strengthening governance structures in the region and in supporting NALAS promote decentralization and the role of local.
Трансферът на ноу-хау в областите, свързани с европейската интеграция и модернизация на местната публична администрация, подкрепен от KDZ и BASIT, бяха високо оценени от НАЛАС и нашите членове и ние ви благодарим за това.
The know-how transfer in the fields related to European integration and modernization of local public administrations facilitated by KDZ and BASIT have been highly appreciated by NALAS members, and we thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, Emanuil, for the compromise introduction. I really appreciate you didn't just focus on the local finances, which is maybe something which we would expect from a mayor to say, okay, we have problems with the local finances, but also this focus on the issue of intergovernmental coordination, which is a new task, let's say a new task in times of COVID, which we have to focus more. Coordination between government, coordination between the national government, regional governments, and the municipalities, maybe also with civil society, and of course the European Union, and focusing also the cross-border cooperation. So this is very important for us. Thank you very much for this quick overview. I want to give over the floor to Damir Marjanović, who is, I think, the one in the panel who is the expert on COVID, if I got it right. Damir is a professor at the International Burch University in Sarajevo, and he teaches in the Department of Genetics and Bioenergy. Engineering. So he has the overview also on COVID. He was minister in the Canton, Sarajevo, and now he's a member of the parliament of the Canton, Sarajevo. He worked for OECD and other international organizations, and he's also member of the, let's call it, COVID task force of the Canton, Sarajevo. Damir, please, the floor is yours for your initial statement.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. Also, I have to apologize myself if you will hear some other noises. We have some reconstruction around the building, so I'll try to be a little bit louder than engines around me. Yes. My presentation will be pretty much short, but it will be a little bit different because, as you said, my field is more science than politician. Let's say that I'm much more successful in science than in politics. Well, it doesn't mean that I'm a great scientist. It means that I'm completely unsuccessful in politics. However, as you said, 8 years ago, I was a Minister of Education and Science in Canton, Sarajevo. And let me give you a brief explanation of my country. If you come in Bosnia, I will tell you, welcome to a country of 100 ministers. We don't have 100,000 lakes, we have 100 ministers. At this moment in Bosnia and Herzegovina, I have 13.1 Ministry of Health, which means that we have 13.1 Minister of Health here in Bosnia and Herzegovina. As you probably know, Bosnia and Herzegovina has a state government, has two entities, and one of the entity that is called Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina is divided in 10 different cantons. Each canton is like state itself, has our own government, parliament, and has also most of the ministries, prime minister, of course, and the only thing that we don't have it on the cantonal parliament is actually Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Defense. In Sarajevo, sometimes you don't need Ministry of Foreign Affairs because even if you're just a local politician, you have a chance to be in contact with a lot of embassies, a lot of representatives of different European organizations, companies, etc., etc., etc. Well, yes, as you said, I'm a little bit familiar with this situation because my field is molecular genetic analysis, especially genetic testing, and last 12 months I spent most of the time in convincing politicians to not stop scientists in Bosnia and Herzegovina to do their job. For your information, we have huge potential in DNA testing. We have a significant number of the scientists in that field. We have a significant number of the laboratories in the field of DNA testing. Even in April, we already had sequence of virus that we have here in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So basically, scientists, we did a great job without any kind of support of the governmental, any kind of governmental level. What happened actually in this field, in this time, one of the most important things for each country, for our society, is actual development of the science and the scientific efforts to give and to offer solution for pandemic situation. Unfortunately, this pandemic, COVID-19, actually SARS-CoV-2 virus, just showed us that we are too anthropocentric and that we believe that we live in the society that we can control everything. Just to explain it from the biological point of view, virus is not even the organism. It doesn't have a cell. It's just life form. And just one very simple life form showed us how our society is very fragile. Not only here in Western Balkan, but all over the world, in EU, in Russia, in United States. It just put us biologically, us as a species, Homo sapiens, on the right place, and just explained us that are maybe from the anthropological point of view, we are very developed, but from the social anthropological view, we are just, let's say, overestimating our position in this beautiful planet. Well, what was the problem at the early beginning? Bosnia had a good start. Like many other countries, even in February, scientists, we organized some of the meetings, convinced politicians that the things that is happening even in January, actually, that thing is happening in China, it will influence us. We knew that because from the scientific point of view, everything was, let's say, perfect for developing this kind of situation. After the episode from Italy, Bosnian governments, and this is plural because we have several levels, they made the decision about complete lockdown. And that was a good decision at the time because you had something very unknown with mass casualties in Italia, just 800 kilometers from you. And the very first step was, let's say, well pointed that it was on the time. Unfortunately, from time to time, and after several weeks, and in the future times, we have seen all imperfections of our society here in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We have seen that this decentralization and the existing of these hundreds of the ministries is actually just a great situation for avoiding the responsibility for doing their job. When you have 13 ministers of health in country, you are expecting that you will be 13 times more, let's say, efficient than some other country with only one minister, because yeah, they would be worried about all these things that is connected with the health of the population. Unfortunately, what happened with us? It happened that we didn't have communication between cantons. We didn't have proper communication on the federal level. On the state level, you don't have health, Ministry of the Health, and all the actions actually were, let's say, located and focused on the local level. And if you ask me at this moment, right now, at this moment, I will explain what's happening in Canton Sarajevo. You having position situation that Canton Sarajevo, some small local community, is taking over responsibility of the state government, because state government is doing nothing. That's how it looks like. If you analyze the numbers, let me check once again, just to be sure. According to the official data, when we are talking about the deaths, a number of the deaths per 100,000 people, Bosnia is on the 7th place. When you are taking about case fatality, about percentage of the deaths per number of the infected people, positive results, Bosnia is on 11th place in the world and actually the 2nd in the Europe, which means that we were not so efficient. Even we had very good scientific start regarding the genetic testing and everything else. Unfortunately, our health system was not prepared, but the biggest issue is that our governmental system was not prepared at all. Very often you had the conflicts between different levels of the governmenting. Very often you had within crucial things that one level of the government is just trying to say this is not our responsibility. For your information, Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina has his own Ministry of Health. And that Ministry of Health has crisis headquarters, call it whatever you want. And they are telling and giving some things that you have to respect, measures. If you don't want to respect it on the continental level, you can avoid it. Because government on the federal level, they didn't want to make any decision after they made few decisions about lockdowns, but later on, they just step on the side and that crisis headquarters was giving some measures, but it was not actually obligatory measures. They said obligatory suggestions. So basically, cantonal governments, sometimes they were following, sometimes they were waiting, sometimes they were not following, etc., etc., etc. So what happened in the end? Actually, what happened at the beginning? A lot of people in Bosnia was very disappointed with the EU statement at the early beginning, especially in the February, March. I hope that you will remember that that time there were some decisions, there were some ideas that some of the important medical supplies cannot be exported outside of the EU. During that time, Bosnia and Herzegovina had to find a way, actually cantonal governments or regional governments, they have to find a way to get those things outside of the EU area. So don't be surprised that many people in Bosnia recognize that from time to time, we had much more open space on the east to find something that we are looking for than on the west. That's how it looks like. It's usual, you know, Bosnia is some kind of border. I would like to say crossroad between Eastern Europe and between Eurasians connections, and then Western Europe and EU countries. So basically, we have open borders, and believe me, during that time, it was much easier for us to try to find solution on the east than on the west. So what is happening right now? But we have two huge issues. Actually, we have two huge crises at this moment, and they are connected. The first one is like everybody else. We are here in the COVID-19 situation and environment, and we are facing the same problems like you in each of your country, except that we have much more complicated situation, and you can see in one very simple example. At this moment in Serbia, you have 250,000 of the people already vaccinated. In Croatia, on the western side, you have like, I think 75, 80,000. I'm not sure about the numbers, but it's approximate. Here in Bosnia, you have a zero. Because Bosnia and Herzegovina, since discordance and since some of the not good diplomatical position, they didn't at this moment find a way to get any vaccine except possible COVAX approach. And as you know, the COVAX system is not really functioning yet. So basically, at this moment, I think that Bosnia and Herzegovina is one of the only country all over the world, probably in Europe, without any person that is officially vaccinated. So what happened? We cannot now, local governments like cantonal government, which was changed 14 days ago, just not 14 days, 1 month ago, we get new government here in Canton, Sarajevo. Now they are trying to use diplomatical connections, even if we don't have Ministry of Foreign Affairs, trying to find out vaccine all over the world, trying to have direct contracts with Chinese companies, with Russian companies, etc., etc., etc. And once again, we don't have any information from the EU side that in some short period, maybe it will be helped at the beginning to Bosnia to overcome this situation. I was listening, my colleague from Austria, Lukas, you did a great presentation, and thank you very much. But yeah, I just want to share something with you. In Bosnia, we have something that we call High Representative. You probably know that. This guy, Mr. Valentinsko, is from Austria. And actually, I will be very, last 10, 15 years, unfortunately, he was not so efficient. It's the politics, I will avoid the politics. But I was pretty much disappointed with this situation that Mr. Valentinsko didn't use his authority and connection in Austria to establish that kind of help like you are offering to Kosovo. So basically, I think that Bosnia didn't use, because of our, don't worry, I'm not going to blame EU for our situation. I will start with myself. I'm Bosnian. I know where is the problem. The problem is not in EU. The problem is in Bosnia, mostly. But however, there is some other thing that is connected with the EU, and there is the second crisis. It's a migrant crisis. Now, at this moment, I have two parallel sessions. Cantonal government, cantonal parliament is discussing about the crisis in Canton Sarajevo regarding the number of the migrants, regarding the old problems that we have it, regarding the financing, regarding the crime and everything else. And it's very funny that at this moment, a lot of Bosnians, including myself, we don't see the right efforts that this migrant crisis is recognized as a regional crisis. Yes, we have information that EU is giving some money for that solution, but that money is mostly going to IOM, and nobody knows what is the amount of money and how it is spending, etc., etc., etc. Most of the people, I will be very honest, and this is true. If you want to go on the street of Sarajevo, they will tell you they feel a little bit put on the side, once again, from the EU side regarding the COVID-19, but also regarding the migrant crisis. Let me be very honest. We are a relatively fragile society. It is very difficult in this complex situation to organize everything to work functionally, even for the only for the COVID-19, but with all those 2-3 problems that we have it, well, it's a huge issue if you put it together. For your information, we have a lot of complaints from some EU countries, because we are bordering with one of the EU countries, how the EU police officers from other side is treating the migrants when they try to go in Croatia. A very non-EU approach. When some things happen, those things happened in Bosnia, well, most of the time we get words, criticizing and everything else, but honestly, we don't see that we are working together on this solution. I know that maybe for you it is not connected with COVID-19, but this is very connected with COVID-19 because, as I said, according to information that we have it right now and approximation, well, Bosnia will be on the tail once again regarding vaccination and everything else. And mostly we will try to find, and we will probably find the vaccines on the east, not on the west. And then don't be surprised that the influence of those countries like Russia, like Turkey, like China, like some other countries will be much more present in Bosnia than EU. So I hope that you don't mind. I'm not a diplomatic person. I will finish it. I'm not a person of diplomacy. I'm a scientist. I'm just using facts, and I don't have obligation to be polite. I have obligation to be. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Damir. Because I would like to give the floor to Stefano so that we can afterwards have a short discussion and also Lukas giving, let's say, answering it. I want to say thank you. We don't expect you to be a diplomat here. So open words are necessary. And I want to say thank you for yeah, I mean, you brought also another picture. Huh? Of course, Bosnia is an own case with the very complex system. And this has consequences for COVID, but also focusing on the connection to migration crisis and the big global picture. So if there is no transparency or not enough transparency in what the European Union does and where the money goes, and if there is not the adequate support or even maybe seen the adequate support, what does it mean on the global picture? Huh? Getting vaccinations from other countries. I think similar situation we see also in other countries in the Western Balkans. Thank you, Damir, for this broader overview. Stefano, Marta, last but not least, from OECD. Because we know you work on the one side on SDG, but OECD is also working on the issues on COVID. So there was a big conference in the last, I think 2 months ago. Stefano works for the Cities, Urban Policies and Sustainable Development Division in the OECD. He's coordinating the program Territorial Approach to Sustainable Development Goals. And he has also brought knowledge and experience from his work before in the food and agriculture organization of United Nations. Yeah, Stefano, please. I give the floor simply to you for your statement.
Thank you very much, Thomas, and thank you everybody for inviting me. It's really a pleasure to represent the OECD today at this important conference. So as you mentioned, Thomas, what I will try to do in this very short intervention is to try to connect the work that we are doing at the OECD on the Sustainable Development Goals with the work that we are doing on COVID-19. And see, for example, how the Sustainable Development Goals can be a framework for cities and for regions to recover from COVID-19. I prepared a few slides, if you allow me, 1 second. So basically, we developed in the last 6 months, let's say, a research and analysis on what cities are doing to respond to the COVID-19 crisis. First of all, we need to stress that cities are really playing a key role. Cities, local government can really play a key role in responding to COVID-19 crisis. First, because sometimes they are implementing national measures, but also because very often they can come up with innovative ideas on long, medium, and long-term strategy to recover from the crisis. These are the 10 lessons that we identify as OECD for building back better cities from after the crisis. I will mention very quickly the first 9, and I will focus in particular on the number 10, that is the one that is relevant for the conference. So how the SDGs can help the cities and regions to recover from the crisis in the medium and long term. So the first lesson that is emerging is that while COVID-19 had an asymmetrical impact across territories, the initial policy responses were, as we said, OECD space blind. So they were not really taking into consideration the local and regional government. So the idea is that now we really recognize the importance of place-based and people-centered policy and responses to the crisis. The second point is that COVID-19 started as an health crisis, but then turned into an unprecedented economic and social crisis. And local government in particular, as mentioned by the president of NALAS, were really affected by this crisis, in particular financially, but not only. The third point is that while most of the world was in lockdown, we also rediscovered the need to shift from the idea of mobility to the idea of accessibility. Then another important point is that COVID-19 was an eye-opener to all forms of inequality across people and across places, in particular in large cities. The fifth point is that now there is this idea that the main problem was density. Actually, what we are seeing in the city is that in big city, the real problem was not density, but was the persistent inequality in big cities rather than density per se. The sixth point is the importance of digitalization. This was mentioned already by some of the colleagues. So digitalization has started to change the future of work in city and our relationship to productivity, mobility, social interaction. Seventh point is the important combination of the Zoom effect, let's say, the lack of traveling in this almost 1 year of crisis, and the Greta effect. This accelerated the citizens' environmental awareness and had a positive impact on environment. The point number 8 is that COVID-19 holds implications for government and citizens in their trust towards government, and in particular, and this was mentioned by the two colleagues before me, the importance of multi-level coordination, intergovernmental coordination. We really saw that the countries that were successful in responding to the crisis were the one where the local, the regional, and the national government were really coordinating well their responses. And the 9th point is the importance of resilience. That is not a new concept, although it can be also applied to the COVID-19. And finally, and this is what I'm going to develop in my intervention, is that global agenda, and in particular the SDGs, they've never been so important and so timely for local and regional government. Why? Because we really believe that the SDGs can provide a framework for government in general, but even more for local and regional government to a long-term framework, a long-term vision that can be shared with the private sector, the civil society, the academia, and so on, to develop long-term strategy, go beyond the very short-term responses to COVID-19. So at the OECD, we started working on localizing the SDGs, a territorial approach to the SDGs, before the COVID-19 crisis. We launched this program in 2018 at the Level Political Forum that had 3 main objectives. The first one was to understand how cities analyze and understand how cities and regions can play an important role in implementing the Sustainable Development Goal, and in particular to use the Sustainable Development Goal as a policy-making tool. The second point was how to measure progress towards the SDGs, and here we developed an indicator framework that is currently helping 600 cities and 600 regions in OECD countries to measure progress towards the SDGs. And then the third component that we are seeing is more and more relevant in this COVID-19 period is to promote an exchange of knowledge and experiences between cities and regions. So we developed a program with 11 cities and regions from all over the world that you can see in the slide, that are the pilot of our program, is where we are really implementing this recommendation. And we also organize a OECD roundtable of cities and regions for SDGs, where we bring together not only these 9 pilots, not only these 11 pilots, but also other international organizations, other cities that are working on localizing the SDGs. The key assumption that we had at the beginning of the program, and that we are tested to be very relevant are these three. First one is that the SDGs are a shared responsibility across levels of government, and this is very much in line also for in line with the responses to the COVID-19. So it's a shared responsibility. In terms of SDGs, we are seeing that many countries are using this framework of the Sustainable Development Goals to improve coordination and alignment across levels of government, like Germany, Japan, and so on. The second point is the importance to go more granular in the measurement of the Sustainable Development Goals, so the importance to go beyond the national average. And we are seeing that there are really strong territorial disparities in achieving the social, the economic, and environmental SDGs in all OECD countries, and also that regions and cities are not on track in achieving the SDGs, even in OECD countries. And the third very important point is that the SDGs are not just a compliance agenda. So it's not just about reporting, but they offer a window of opportunity for cities and for regions to be used as a policy-making tool to improve, to implement a multi-sectoral approach, to work with the private sector, to work with the civil society, to work across levels of government. And this is extremely relevant also in the context of the COVID-19 crisis. We developed this indicator framework at OECD that you can access also at the link you can find in the slide. It's an indicator framework that includes 130 plus indicator that we call the place relevant, because we made a selection out of the 169 target of the SDGs. We identify which are relevant for cities and for regions in OECD countries. And we came up with this list, and we also identified that at least 105, so 65% of the target of the SDGs cannot be achieved if local and regional government are not involved. Some findings of from our analysis of this indicator framework are that, as I mentioned, cities and regions are not on track on the SDGs. The main gaps for regions are climate, energy, ocean, biodiversity, industry, and innovation. And the main gaps for cities are in terms of climate, biodiversity, and energy. And both cities and regions are really lagging behind in terms of gender-related targets. But despite this delay, the fact that cities and regions are lagging behind, there are many good practices of more and more cities and regions that are using the SDGs to improve their local development plans, policy, and action. And we really think that this can be extremely helpful in this COVID-19 era, and in particular in the post-COVID-19 era, to develop long-term strategies for with the issue of sustainability of the core of the strategy. For example, I will just mention one of our pilot, the city of Bonn in Germany, that has used the SDGs to develop the sustainability strategy. They use the SDGs to identify the 6 top priority for the local administration. And now they are using them to, in terms of budgeting, to see how they can allocate the resources to this priority, and also how they can use this to work with the business community. So this solution can be extremely helpful to put in place strategies and responses and policy also in the COVID-19 era. This is just to show you the visualization tool that you can access online. I will stop here, and I really look forward to the discussion. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Stefano. Thank you for also the quick presentation, but very concise and great overview. We are SDG believers here in the office in KDZ, so I like very much the approach of SDGs, which could be a framework for the cities to the recovery of COVID-19. I think this is something which all of us have to consider more intensively in future. Thank you very much, Stefano. I would like now to open the floor for discussion. There are some questions, remarks. I want just to mention that after lunch we have a keynote also from Riga, from the city of Riga, showing how Riga is implementing the SDGs. That's very important to mention. But I would like to open the floor now for discussion. I guess, Lukas, there have been some statements which maybe need an answer from the side of the, let's say, representative how to say, the European Union or European Union institution. Would you like to give? I would like to give the floor to you, maybe to answer or to sum up from your view.
Thank you so much. Thanks for all the great contributions to today's discussion. I'm more than happy that we can exchange. I've learned a lot also from the remarks by Damir Marjanović. Damir, as you are, let's say, somebody with some critiques regarding the EU from the outside, I'm somebody with critiques from the inside. I'm absolutely not happy with each and every step the EU in general, the European Commission, and especially the European Council takes regarding the Western Balkans. We are too slow. We are sometimes not efficient enough, and we are not yet emotionally involved as we should be, since this is a part of Europe. So I totally agree with you when it comes to the question, let's say, what is Europe still lacking of? And Europe is lacking of a lot of things regarding the Western Balkans. To be frank, I guess among all the 6 Western Balkan countries, Bosnia has some kind of very special trouble, special problems, which can not be solved easily. But yeah, you will remain within Europe. We are lucky to have you. You are fellow Europeans in Bosnia, and we must do everything we can to solve the issues. Generally, as you may know, Valentin Inzko has a very good reputation for his ongoing work in all that fields. But of course, I will have a deeper look into how we could support him in a better way. And I'm also very frank on the fact that, yeah, let's say, as my political life went so far, I was more involved into Kosovo issues than in Bosnia issues. That's how it happened. But that doesn't mean that for the future I could not be more interested and involved and maybe of some support regarding Bosnia. And that's what I intend to do, since there's also the formal obligation of the delegation for Kosovo and Bosnia, both of them in the European Parliament. So I would really appreciate if you would send me an email message afterwards, or I could send you one, and we can remain in contact, because I'm more than happy on each and every contact in Bosnia to do the best I can to contribute to a positive future development. And as you may know, we are about to decide on the Bosnia report of the European Parliament in the coming up weeks, and we have still the opportunity to table amendments for this report. I'm more than grateful for each and every reasonable recommendation what to amend and what to fight for during this report, especially, as already mentioned, in the field of positive future perspective, not only of solving problems, but also of proper and positive future perspectives for now and the generations to come. So thank you, and let us this make a good start for a good cooperation, Damir. That's what I would really appreciate. Thank you. You're muted.
Thank you. That's a good hint. Thank you, Lukas, for the answer and for the statement. I would like to give the floor a short second time to Emanuil Manolov with one question. I hope the translation is working properly.
Yes.
We made together with Nalas, and I see also in the chat Ankica from the city of Bijeljina, the Agenda 2030 in my municipality brochure handbook from Nalas, implementing SDGs. Stefano, it's also maybe interesting for you. And Mr. Manolov, when you see now the situation as it is, the impact of COVID as it is, do you also think that the SDGs, that the Sustainable Development Goals, can be a driver for the municipalities in the region and also for the EU integration?
Виждам, господин Манолов, ние сте подготвили в НАЛАС документ агенда или програма за 2030 година. Смятате ли, че целите на устойчивото развитие могат да бъдат двигател както на регионално ниво, така и за европейска интеграция?
Да, благодаря. За успешното възстановяване от кризата, власти на Югоизточна Европа очакват редица промени, свързани с децентрализация, по-големи правомощия по отношение на местните данъци, по-високи нива на правителствени трансфери, по-гъвкави правила за местни заеми, повече национални фондове за социално и икономическо възстановяване и в крайна сметка подобряване на цифровата инфраструктура и капацитета на цифровизация на услугите.
Yes, societies have a lot of expectations for the recovery of the crisis, and the local authorities expect more decentralization, more powers in the area of local taxes, as well as more social assistance and transfers in order to improve the level of services.
Гледайки напред, трябва да разглеждаме кризата и като възможности за подобряване на местните услуги и насърчаване на развитието в дългосрочна перспектива.
Looking ahead, we need to perceive the crisis as an opportunity as well to improve local services and boost local development in the long term.
Основните глобални предизвикателства, като изменението на климата, миграцията, бежанците и настоящата пандемия от COVID, се решават най-добре колективно с участието на всички нива на управление.
The best way to address the global challenges such as the crisis, migration, climate, and refugees is to ensure common action across all levels of government.
Принципът на приобщаващото партньорство между всички нива на управление е задължителен, за да се справим с тези сложни глобални проблеми и да осигурим ефективен и бърз отговор.
Involving partnership among all governance level is crucial for us to ensure to deal with the crisis and ensure an effective and rapid response.
Кризата трябва да бъде разрешена отдолу нагоре. Ако не успеем да се справим с глобалните проблеми на нашето ниво, то перспективите за решаването им нагоре по веригата няма изглед да бъдат успешни.
The crisis has to be addressed using the bottom-up approach. If we do not resolve the global issues at our local level, it is very unlikely that there is any chance to successfully addressing them at all. They cannot be addressed at all successfully unless they are dealt with at a local level.
Благодаря.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Damir, I want to come to you one more time. Please also have in mind the short time. But you mentioned before the issue of, let's say, I'm not sure if I remember properly, but the trust of the people in Bosnia, and I guess in general in Western Balkans, which is maybe also connected to the question, where does the money go? Yeah? Or where do the European Union fundings go? I have to admit that, I'm working very much with local level, with the local governments, with NALAS, and sometimes we also have the question. So there is the fundings which go to the national levels, and then the question of distribution is sometimes not so very transparent. Let's say it like that. Do you have a kind of proposal here to change this or to have here more transparency of the on the one side of the money, funding, support, and on the other side of the policies of the European Union?
Thank you very much for that question. Well, as I said, if you want to make any critics for somebody else, you have to critique yourself first. So basically, I'm pretty much sure that you're already familiar with the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina, with all these problems with the corruptions and everything that we had in the last 20, 25 years. I'm pretty much sure that Lukas already had a chance through some EU documents and everything else to read about a lot of money that was sent in the last 25 years to Bosnia and Herzegovina, that it's just luck of the trace how they spend it, and a lot of proof that it was spent completely outside of the procedures and everything else. So basically, at this moment, I have one very simple solution. We are talking about local governments, and I will be very honest. At this moment, if you have three different levels of the governments in Bosnia and Herzegovina, you have state, entity, and the cantonal governments. When we're talking about Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, local governments, cantonal governments are the most functional, and local governments are the most open and much more easier for the following the money, much more open and how can I say, it's much easier for you to analyze how to spend the money, etc., etc., etc. And also it is very easy to contact with them, and if you want really to achieve some of the goals, especially in the COVID-19 story, especially immigration story, maybe EU should go a little bit level down. And since we don't have functional state government, that's how it looks like, we have very non-functional level of the entity government. I think that at this moment, Republika Srpska is a little bit different, but I'm talking about Federation Bosnia and Herzegovina. I think that in Federation Bosnia and Herzegovina, the best approach from any EU delegation or any EU company, organization, policy, whatever you want, is to contact directly local government. Because at this moment, state government completely put on the side people, let's say in the Bihać, western part of the Bosnia, with their problems with the migrants. Also, they put aside Sarajevo cantonal government to fight against migration problems. And for your information, now cantonal governments are trying to negotiate on the diplomatic level, EU level, world level, regarding the vaccines and everything else. So my suggestion, will be very honest, you were talking a lot with the state level. You had a chance to see how it's unfunctional. The most functional level of the government right now is actually cantonal level and Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, because 85 up to 90% of all needs myself as a citizen of the Sarajevo, it's based on the cantonal level, and only like 5 to 10% I should contact state level. So it is very easy to do that. So I hope that I give you some brief, how can I say, whole picture about it.
Thank you, Damir. Yes, thank you very much. Stefano, I have a tricky question to you. Maybe you have seen in the chat, there is Alexander Heichlinger, who is also managing a city network, a network of cities, which is focusing on the finance directors, the finance managers of the cities, and they are also working with the SDGs. And he focuses on the importance of measurement in his chat. It's not a question, but he says the importance of measuring the SDGs on the local level. So I have first maybe the more easy question: what is your position on that? Do you think this is a very important issue, the measuring of the SDGs? But my tricky question is, when I hear everything what you said, what OECD is doing, the SDGs as a framework for recovery of COVID, could there be an offer also from, let's say, from OECD to the region, to those who are active there? You know, there are many active in the SDG level, NALAS also, for a kind of cooperation or for developing also a common framework for that?
Thank you, Thomas. The question is tricky, but it's also very interesting. So thanks. In terms of the first one on the measurement, I perfectly agree that measurement is fundamental to work on the SDGs. But at the same time, it shouldn't be the final goal. So at OECD, we developed the indicator framework to support policymakers and to promote policy dialogue. So the goal is not measuring for creating ranking between which is the best city, which is the best region. but creating a measurement framework for evidence-based policy making. So to support policymakers, decision makers in understanding which are the main gaps, which are the main strengths of a particular territory on the SDGs, and to inform the policy. So it's key, the measurement, but it's not the final goal. The final goal is really to have indicators, data, to promote policy dialogue among cities, among regions, and inform the policy. In particular, with our web tool that you can access at the link that I share on the chat, you can see that the idea is that first, we don't have a final composite index on the SDGs, but we measure all the 17 goals. And what we want to do is, in this web tool, we also provide some peers when, for example, you look how Madrid is doing on the SDGs. When you put Madrid in the web tool, then you will see also how others, we suggest peers, like London, Paris, New York, and we compare the performance of these cities on the SDGs, because we would like to promote a policy dialogue between this city and their peers to understand which are the policy and the measure that the other cities are implementing on this. So indicators are key, but for policy dialogue not as a final goal. The second question about possible cooperation with other regions that are working on the SDGs, and NALAS in particular. Yeah, we'll be really very, very happy if we could cooperate on this. We have a program that is currently already involving 11 pilot cities, regions. With some of these pilots, we are working directly with the Association of Municipality, like in Belgium, we are working with VVSG, that is the Association of Flemish City and Municipality. So it would be really nice if we could involve also NALAS or other local government or network of local government in the Balkans. We were really extremely happy to work with you on this topic. So we can follow up after this meeting and see how we can do it concretely.
Thank you very much, Thank you very much, Stefano. So it's now up to me to say thank you to all of you. We took a little bit more than 10 minutes, 10 minutes more. Thank you, the panelists. Lukas had already to leave because he has other obligations. Yeah, I want to thank you very much. Just for kind of sum up, we focus on the importance of rule of law. Yeah. As basis, please. We should not forget. This as basis for everything. Rule of law. With that, investments are coming. Please have in mind also the vision which Lukas brought. Maybe it will not be the Silicon Valley of Europe, but it should. We need a vision for the future. Digitalization can be the vision. Please remember. Or in my view, very important, the issue of the intergovernmental coordination, which we discussed. We need it in the crisis, but we need it also for our daily work. I think this is also a connection between the presentations or the statements of Emanuil, Manolov, and also of Damir. So because intergovernmental coordination, also in a complex system like Bosnia you have presented, is of highest importance. More transparency. I think it's also connected with rule of law, which we need in the region, but obviously also in the European Union, in the cooperation with the region. And last but not least, Stefano's input of SDGs as a framework for the recovery of COVID-19. It's now my pleasure to say thank you once more and to stop this panel. And I want to inform you how it goes on. We make now break till 1 p.m. And please directly at 1 come back to the session. With our second keynote on the SDGs in Riga. Please be on time at 1 in this specific session. Use the time now, the lunch break, and walk around in this conference, in the conference room. Have a look at the expo. We have booths. Alexandra in the morning explained it already. So we have many of our partners cooperating in the BASIC program who have booths and exhibitions in this conference. So use the time and get connected to each other. So we will see us at 1, and I want to say thank you, and I wish you a nice lunch break. Bye.